your core values might not be what you think they are. Dr. Glen, that sounds a little bit like double talk.
It sounds like the Matrix and you are Morpheus.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds
We're
like.
just hooked on the latest Matrix.
We are, man.
Yeah.
I'm taking the red pill. I'm down with you, man.
Let's
do this.
take the red pill right now.
Yeah.
We're going to go deeper into core values. This is actually a follow-up episode to our last podcast. So what we're doing is a little series of episodes for clients of ours that are actually going into our coaching program. So whether you're going into coaching from an individual standpoint or a couple standpoint, these are some of the lessons that we kind of want to, well, I guess we can kind of jumpstart the whole process if you understand some of these concepts. If not, we'll of course explain them during, but these are helpful concepts to kind of get a grasp of. Okay, so in core values in the last episode, we talked about, you know what I should do? We should introduce ourselves.
Because, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome to the 12-Week Relationships Podcast. My name is Pye.
I'm Dr. Glen.
This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. And when we say relationships, we mean all of them. We start from the one that you have with yourself and work your way outwards because, well, our relationships is really everything as humans. So that's the whole concept of the platform. We're talking core values as a follow-up to the last episode where we talked about what are core values and why do they matter. So if you want a definition, kind of how and why they matter in our lives, go check that one out. But this go around, well, we're talking about why core values might not be what you think they are and how these can change and evolve. But let's stick with that first one. What do people typically think are their core values?
It's usually things that they want to be perceived as, or it's a very superficial response. Like, I'm a positive person. I'm a happy person. I'm driven. I like to be successful. Like they say very nice things that sound really good.
I'm spiritual.
I'm spiritual, I'm so into, yoga or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But then it's not those things. It goes deeper than it's the roots of who you are and why you do those things.
Yeah, what we think are those core values is kind of everything we might add to a social media profile, right? I'm into health and fitness. I'm spiritual. I don't like politics. Whatever it might be, I almost want to say that they're, in many cases, we think that they're hobbies. In reality, that is the way that we perceive our core values is as hobbies. I love to read. I love to learn. I'm into self-development. But those are the typical things we see people writing down.
Yeah, it's a dating profile, like you said, versus, why do you do those things and who you are as a person, getting to that root.
Yeah. So the underlying core value, the way that we define this, and this is what kind of makes our process unique, is we actually challenge this and get to a person's underlying core value before we really begin the therapizing process. But what we're really talking about is saying, okay, you wrote self-development. Why? Why is this important to you? Trying to get to that underlying why for each of these behaviors. Why is spirituality important? Why do you go to church? Why do you work out every day?
Yeah, and once you keep asking the whys, you get to the core of the root of why they do what they do, whether it's vanity, whether it's looks, whether it's to try to impress someone, or they really do it because they care about their health. We get to the core and the root of why they do it.
Yeah. And the core of that why affects essentially everything that they do, not just in that particular activity, but in their entire lives. And so, like we said in the last episode, a person would typically have 3 to 5 of these core values. So maybe we can give a couple examples of some of these. So from our clients and case studies, what have we seen as some of the core values that they might list versus what they actually are?
So I care about my family, right? So they'll put family as a core value, and then when we get to the why of it, it becomes, I want to change the world. And then when you get to the value of family, they're financially responsible and they're kind of around, but they're not really there for the family.
Wait, so you're talking about a case where someone wrote family
as a core value,
but then ultimately it came down to,
I want to leave a legacy for my family.
I see.
And so then we got to the core of it. So it wasn't family. I mean, they care about their family, but it was more about, I want to leave a legacy for my family. So it's more individual in what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
And then that person, or there's several people that do this. It's just their activities with their family. It's more about in the future, and they're not really present with the people in their lives.
That's a one that I think we have seen quite a bit
That's
and will continue to
that's
see.
a common thing. Like driven people, they're like, oh, I'm all about family, but all of their actions and their values is actually about growth and development and success.
Yeah.
And prospering, which is great, right? But it's not family.
It's not family.
It's not family.
Yeah.
Or it's secondarily in terms of they're reaping the indirect benefits of it in that way, but it's not the value.
Correct.
And so, a lot of people, when we go through this process, like the realization of like, wow, this is okay. I'm exposed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see why I'm doing what I'm doing.
And if someone puts down family and that were an actual value set for them, then you'd expect it showing up in like just regular everyday behavior, right? They would make time in the evenings for family dinners. They would plan family activities. But what we see in a client that has that kind of a value set, if they value legacy and leaving their family with, whatever it is that they create, then what you actually see in their action is the exact opposite. They don't make time for the family. They tend to prioritize work over everything. Work has this, and there's nothing wrong with each of these things, right? The issue that we have is that we misinterpret them.
Yeah, they're not aligned. So like, for example, like if the partner is saying, you're not here, but they're like, no, I'm here. I spent 3 hours with the kid. That's not the point. That's not the connecting or being there.
Yeah, while you're here, you're thinking about your business.
And you're doing all these all
stuff.
these other things. So it's not even in alignment. And that's what's causing a lot of conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So, once you get to the core of things, everything, it's a lot easier to dissect and to be like, okay, this is why this is happening.
Yeah. Let's go over another common theme. We see a very common theme almost like every client with spirituality.
Spirituality, and then the why becomes, socializing.
Yeah. So we've had the whys as socializing. We've had whys as, I want to develop a closer relationship with God. We've had whys along the lines of business. This is how I network and create, business. And once again, it shows through because you take, let's say, a couple, and let's say that one person they're spiritual. They go to church because of that fundamental desire to get closer to God, right? They genuinely value that relationship with God. The other person, let's say it's the business person, that's where they network. Church is a place to network and to meet people, right? Well, once they get there, they behave fundamentally different.
Even though it's the same place.
Yeah, they're all in the same place. They're all members of the same church. They're all, part of the same religion, but their behavior is dramatically different because the one person valuing their relationship with God is paying attention, is reading, is meditating, is praying, is doing all those things, while the other person is finding out who the people are sitting next to him. And, what do you do for work, and socializing, and in between, sessions and classes and whatever it is, they're networking basically. And so you can carry that outside of everything. It could be a church event. It could be church itself. It could be just a completely different scenario. Like maybe we're just at a neighborhood barbecue, but the two people are going to behave in a similar manner where one person, first, the person who values God in that relationship, they might not even be interested in the neighborhood barbecue, right? But the other person would, because that's, again, another opportunity to network and to get to know people and to think business. So it carries out to every one of these aspects of life.
Yeah, and it basically, eventually the facade will be broken and you'll see who the person actually is.
Yeah.
Like you can never hide it. You can do it temporarily, but eventually your real values and your who you are as a person is going to come out.
Yeah, but when that facade is broken, this is the thing though, is that our clients don't generally realize that the facade is broken. They just think the other person might be two-faced, or they might be a hypocrite, or they might be whatever it is, right? They don't pinpoint it and go, this is the actual value. They just say, you've changed, or you're not who you said you were.
Yeah, you said that you value spirituality, but look at your behavior now. You're right. And then people start judging and they start acting negative versus that was never the value in the first place.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's going much, much deeper than that. Or on an individual level, some people are not self-aware. So they'll be like, I am a spiritual person.
Yeah.
But then why am I doing all these social events and it should be about God? And they ask all these questions because for you it's about socializing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just in your face. Once you get to the core values, there's no hiding.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating thing because from the side of, even when you take two people and you just explain and help them to understand their own values, once they know their values and they understand their partner's values, there's a shift in the way that they communicate with each other. There's a shift in that understanding. It's no longer you're a hypocrite and you're this. It's okay. You're doing those things because this is the underlying value.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing through our process is instead of like use I statements, take turns and all of this, it's like, oh, like for example, someone's coming on strong and then the other person's kind of withdrawing. I said, why aren't you talking to me? It's, oh, your core value of you need safety right now and you need to process.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to give you a hug. Here's
Yeah.
a hug. Take your time, feel good, and then come back to me.
Yeah.
So it goes beyond the dialogue and these kind of superficial advice that you get. It's to the core, like, oh, you just need space right now.
Yeah.
Great.
And as we mentioned in that last episode, that is the fundamental difference of what we do versus a typical coaching, counseling, or couples therapy type model is that we're not dealing, symptoms are worth addressing, but only after the root problem has been discovered. Whereas in a typical traditional model, you're talking symptomatic approaches only. It's how you're arguing, it's how you're doing all those things. We're talking about why you're arguing. What are the reasons?
Yeah, and getting to the core. And it was so funny because one of the sessions they were talking about love languages, and they're like, "Oh, you love gifts."
Mm-hmm.
But then it was like, "Well, that's not true because if it's a random gift, you're not going to love it. But it's got to be aligned with your values. A gift of purpose.
Yeah,
A gift, something that's aligned with self growth because that person they really value that. That would be a valuable gift, right? So it's
Correct.
not just the gift itself; it has to align with the value itself."
Well, and on top of that, I think Gary Chapman is wonderful,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, it's
Love
awesome.
Languages, the series
It's
is
a beautiful
fantastic.
thing.
We both love
Yeah.
what he's done with that. The issue, in my opinion, is that we don't just have one love language. I think most people, and I know that Gary doesn't necessarily preach that, but I think most people read the book and they come away from it going, I'm a word of affirmation person. I'm a gifts person. I'm this, I'm that. And they put themselves into a bucket. And what we tell our clients is that no, you're actually all of them. When somebody speaks your love language to your value, you're all of them. See, I don't like gifts, but like you said, if someone gives me a gift based on I love personal development and growth, if they give me a gift that's around that, it could be anything, right? It could be a gift card to, my one-on-one coaching with jiu-jitsu. It could be a self-development book. It could be any of those things. I would appreciate that gift, but I'm not going to appreciate an expensive wallet or a nice pair of shoes.
It's not going to have
shoes
this,
are pretty functional.
Yeah.
I like that, but
it's not going to be the same effect. Or even affirmations, like you said, right? Like if everyone's like, Pye, awesome, dude, I love your pants. I love the way you dress versus, man, I could see that you're really changing. Man, you've grown a lot. That would mean more because that's more aligned with your values.
or like I consider myself a framework person. I love to break down complex things and make them simple. So if you were to come to me and say, this really helped, the way that you see the world and the way that you're interpreting things, it's making a huge difference. That would mean the world to me. But if you came to me and you're like, any of those other things that you said, it would mean nothing.
I love your Pac-Man socks.
I mean, I did choose these, so thank you. Appreciate that. But that is part of me. I am a geek, so that's part of me. But yeah, the understanding a person's values helps us to speak every one of their love languages, not just one.
Exactly. And I love how like instead of like this mind racing, like, okay, I got to get all these gifts, it goes to, oh, this is just who you are. The mind goes quiet. Like this is like every time, like once we get to the values, there's just silence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then there's like this pause and it's like, okay, so let's work from here.
Yeah.
The onion has been peeled.
Yeah. This is kind of where our process begins is getting to those core values and then beginning the therapy process with an understanding. Well, we're basically teaching them how a healthy relationship should operate so that in the future, if they want to come back and they want to continue, they totally can. But they can also continue on their own as an expert in their own relationships.
Exactly. And then not only that, but all the other areas of your life, right? Like even your career, if you know your core values, you can align and then start moving in that direction in all areas of your life.
Okay, so this was a bit of a brief summary on the last episode. We spent a good amount of time on the last episode going through the what, the why, the how, all of that. Why don't we start branching into how core values shift through change and growth? Because what your values are today, well, it might not necessarily carry forward in the future, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's changing every single day. And then like just developmentally, depending upon the age you're in, you're going to have different interests, right? So when you're in 20s, it's about individuality and knowing yourself and achieving. And then in your 30s, it becomes more about family and connections and friendships.
Yeah.
In your 40s and 50s, it's more about purpose. So we're just always changing as we're growing.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the pieces of our framework, right? So we have the framework is broken down into basically 5 pieces that support the desire for a relationship, your want of a relationship. And this framework applies to every relationship. So the 5 pieces of desire. Then we have 5 pieces of sustainability. This is the emotional cost of a relationship. And we want a relationship to be sustainable. When the emotional costs are high, it is unsustainable. So on the sustainability side, one of those 5 components is change and growth. And what you just said is a law. We cannot not change. I don't like double negatives, but change is the only constant, right? This is
Change
the thing
is always happening, even if you don't want it to.
Yeah. And it happens in very small increments. So it's happening each day as we wake up and we go through our morning routine, and then we step out of the house and we go to work and have different experiences and read books. And it's all those little experiences that lead to this 1% change each day. And over time, change and growth can shift your values. It can also shift values if there's, like, let's say, an extreme experience, like near-death experiences, war, all these types of things can dramatically shift a person's values quickly. But for the most part, bar any extreme situation, those values will shift by a small 1 to 0.1% each day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even the relationships that you build, through changing or like understanding a person more, you're actually changing your values at that time, right? Like if you're more of a driven person, like it's all about success, but then you're taking time to connect with a friend or a partner, now that value of connection becomes greater. You're developing a new value as you're working through that.
Yeah. This is a concept that's very closely tied to a Psych 101 idea, Maslow's hierarchy.
Yes.
If you have taken a psychology class, you may remember the pyramid.
The Maslow's pyramid, man. Yeah, and at the base is food, clothing, and shelter, because you have to have that to survive, right? Above that is having access to resources. So you have to have community. Above that, or access to resources. Above that is community, having people around you. And then once you have that base, the 3 tiers, then it goes to the top 2 tiers, which is esteem, how you feel about yourself. And then the apex of the pyramid is self-actualization. Who am I as a person?
And if I remember right, I think esteem was esteem and also love, right? It was feeling loved, basically.
Building quality relations. So the top 2 tiers is more about quality of life. The bottom 3 tiers is about survival and just to, basically to maintain.
Yeah. It's important to understand Maslow's because it has a very direct impact over a person's core values. For example, when you're younger, right? If you're 16, 17, 18, when you're talking about, I want to work, what we're really talking about is you need to make money, right? But when you're older, let's say in your 30s, and you say, I want to work, I like to work, what you're probably talking about is more so having a job that provides opportunities for growth and development. Those 2 things are very different because in your 30s, you've figured out the basics, right? You've already got the ability to provide for yourself, you have your physiological and your survival needs taken care of. Now what you're talking about is needs that fit into the esteem and self-actualization of like ongoing growth. So those, your sense of like reward is one of those pieces of desire on that side of like wanting a relationship, right? Your sense of reward when you're younger is going to be different than what you find rewarding in a relationship later on in life. And this is where we get to the idea of when you see a person who overly values, let's say, money, we label them very quickly.
Gold digger.
Gold digger, right?
Yeah.
We label them very quickly without going back to kind of understand that there's probably a reason why they're at that space. Meaning they've probably had a good amount of trauma in their life around the idea of just providing. Like they probably grew up in a household that didn't have much money. They might have had to go to work early in life. They might have, been constantly worried about there being enough food, there being a roof over the head. Problems that a lot of people face. But if you grew up in a middle class household, you never did. If you're middle class and above, you never had to face those issues. So this person has a fear of not being able to provide, of not making money, of they overly value money because they haven't met those basic needs on Maslow hierarchy. They haven't figured that stuff out yet. So they go into the world and they look for relationships that can provide that.
Yeah, when they don't need to. Like in that example, I think, like for example, the first 3 tiers is, like you see this in relationships a lot. Like when people get together and then they're building their life, like after a marriage, they need to get a house or they move into an apartment. And for the most part, people get along because they're just building to survive.
Yes.
Right? You go to work, I go to
True.
work, let's get groceries, and you're just building that part of your life. So you're dealing with the first 3 tiers. But once you're established, then it gets to the quality of the relationship and the quality of life that you would like to have.
Yeah.
And that's where, like in that example that you gave, like the person, they may have more than enough, but in their mind, it's never enough. And they're pursuing money when they have more than enough to be happy.
Yeah. That's what's so fascinating about it is that going to the gold digger, this is a person that overly values money because of this past trauma. And maybe they do find somebody that can provide for them, right? But once that need is met, then what?
Yeah.
Then where do they go from there? Because eventually they're going to want love and esteem. They're going to want to self-actualize.
And that's what they have to look at.
And
right?
Same thing with the couple that goes into a marriage and they both are establishing themselves. They're both using one another to provide and to put a roof over their head and to grow. And for a good amount of time, this is enough for them. Because again, our sense of reward comes from these underlying values, right? So when we have kind of a fear-driven value of providing and putting a roof over our head, it's enough reward. It's enough of a reason to be with somebody because we can provide for ourselves. We can go through school. We can, get good jobs. We can get a home. But then 10 years down the road, you're good. Both of you are partners and you've gotten to a certain place. And now what you're looking for is this esteem needs, these personal needs, and the ability to grow beyond. And then they look at each other and they go, what can you do for me?
Exactly. Like, oh, I chose the wrong partner.
I chose the wrong partner.
Yeah. Versus like, wow, we've earned the right to get to this space to focus on building a quality life, a quality relationship. We have the opportunity to be happy.
I love the way you put that. Earn the right.
We've earned the right. It's a privilege. And a lot of people don't take that privilege seriously. And then they just use it as an excuse to sabotage the relationship, sabotage themselves, and then not look at the opportunity that they have.
But I don't think they know what that is. The first time I heard you say that made me pause. That was such a unique way of saying it. Like you have fought and struggled to get to the place where you can actually work on your marriage and relationship. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah, it's a privilege. And then it's getting to the quality of life core values. What'll make you happy as a person.
Yes.
That is a privilege and a luxury that no one should like disregard or not be grateful for if they're in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's happening, what we're describing is basically as you move through Maslow's hierarchy, your core values shift along with each step. I think it's very common. One common theme that we see is in high school, when you look at middle class and above, right? High school is really about esteem and feeling loved. It's about building your sense of worth. So what do high schoolers value? They value recognition, social praise, social acceptance. They value pretty much any girlfriend or boyfriend because it makes them feel loved and accepted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to say like, I'm the valedictorian, that matters. I mean, in the grand scheme of life, right? who gives a shit? No, seriously, like in the grand scheme of life, you were on your high school, you were the star quarterback, you were a valedictorian, you were whatever these achievements in the grand scheme of things matter nothing. But in that world, when you're in a place where you are seeking love and acceptance and esteem, it's everything.
Yeah, but in that example, like if that's what you still value, you're just going backwards. And this is the other thing, like, this happens with couples a lot, or like people in life that they're striving for something, so they're basically trying to establish their basic needs. And then especially with couples, they're like, we rarely fought, and then once we had everything, we fight all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because, you got to get in touch with your values. You've earned the right. You've got the lottery ticket to actually become happier, and you're doing nothing with it.
Now, while our process is basically how to repair all this, and it is completely repairable. Unfortunately, oftentimes, it is very common for us to find couples who have gone 10, 15 years down the road, growing and changing in different directions and arriving at places where they have two fundamentally different value sets. And our job is basically to bring those back to the center, to bring them back and align them. And yes, it works. But this is the typical thing, is that they're so focused on what you just said, on providing, on the needs, and just the busyness of life, that by the time they have earned the right to relax a little bit, to actually start working on the relationship, they've landed in two completely different spaces. I almost feel like sometimes it's two people talking on opposite sides of a canyon, and they're just screaming across the canyon trying to relay messages to each other.
Yeah, but they don't, especially when they don't even know what their core values are. But I want this, and you should do this. And then you go see a therapist, right? And then what's the advice? Let's go back to when you guys first met, which was in this survival state, but that's not where you guys are right now.
Let's do what you did when you first started dating.
Exactly.
We were in high school when we first started dating, so
let's
go to the prom again.
Right, exactly. So, and then it just creates this loop of frustration. Like, why are we not happy?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Well, you have to change the dialogue, Glenn. What you have to do is you have to start respecting each other.
Yeah. All of that.
How do you see? That's the thing, is that misaligned values destroy your ability to respect one another. They destroy your ability to relate. They destroy the reward in the relationships. All of things, these are all components of desire. In desire, we have 5 R's: reward, regard. Well, regard is top, then reward. We have relatability, risk,
and the reciprocation.
When your values are misaligned, all 5 of those things are going to be messed up.
There's no reward. That doesn't feel like it's worth it to be in this relationship.
Yeah.
There's no regard. You don't respect or feel attracted to your partner.
I don't even want to work on the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, I don't respect you. I don't want to. So
yeah.
Until you look at those values and work to align those, there's nothing to fix.
Exactly. And then it's learning to have the conversations, right? So, the other part of sustainability is conflict resolution, identifying the core values that aren't matching, right? So on and so forth, right? Counterbalanced effort, learning to reciprocate and balance things out, balance responsibilities. All of those are the components to sustain a relationship and to build a better quality life.
Yeah.
Versus, here's some gifts for you, man.
Yeah, here you need to do nice things for each other and have more conversations and
have another date night.
And unfortunately, it shows in the numbers. So we talk about this quite a bit, that psychotherapy in and of itself on an individual level, this is still a new field, entirely new when you compare it to other disciplines and industries and whatnot. But still, individual psychotherapy can be very effective. But when you bring it to couples, counseling, therapy, everything, highly ineffective, because they're all going with that symptomatic medical model-based approach where let's address symptoms with painkillers and drugs, but we're not actually going to fix underlying issues. And this is the fundamental difference of what we do. Core value focused therapy is going in at core values, then working and therapizing out with an actual model of what a healthy relationship looks like.
And it's uniform. So no matter who you go see, it's going to be done exactly the same way throughout. And then the other thing too is couples therapy. It's often enmeshed. So you have the couples issues, the individual's issues, and it all gets blended together and it gets very confusing.
Yeah.
We use multiple modalities to separate things out. This is the individual accountability. individual accountability. You have to be accountable for what you do and what you brought. And then there's a couple's issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah. Okay. So for potential clients, I think it's important to understand that this process, it is work. We're going to require honesty. Number one, like you need to be willing to come forward and to actually be open and honest, because in uncovering your value sets, you're going to find interesting things out. Like being the person that is sitting there, and we've seen this realization so many times now. I'm going to give an example of one. I talked to one of our clients is a health and fitness nut, right? And he's super into martial arts. He's super into all these different things. And so I started getting down to why. I go, why are you into health and fitness? Oh, I just love, I love being healthy and being fit. I want to be around for my kids. Okay. But why martial arts specifically? Because you do a lot of things, right? I mean, you could do a lot of things for health and fitness. You could be in the gym lifting weights. You could be playing basketball. Do you do those things? No, I don't. Okay, so why martial arts? Because he loves to box. He loves jujitsu. He loves all these different things. But they're all martial arts. I don't know. I get this like sense of satisfaction in just doing it with somebody. Like when I'm rolling, which is jujitsu, when I'm rolling with someone, being able to learn something and then maybe to like teach them something. And he started talking about the other person this whole time. And I go, wait a second. So you like jujitsu or martial arts because of the aspect of someone else being there, of teaching that person. And he goes, yeah, I really love the process of teaching. I go, okay, do you teach other people? Well, I love to like give my lessons to my kids. Yeah, actually, I really enjoy teaching a lot. In fact, I think my dream would be to own a dojo, to actually like teach people in martial arts and to watch them grow. I go, holy crap, dude. Okay, so you might value health and fitness, right? There might be something else that's driving you towards that. Maybe it's your children because you want to be around and you want to spend time with your children. That is a core value in and of itself. Like, I want to be there for my kids. Mm-hmm. That's driving your health and fitness. But the reason that you actually do martial arts, nothing to do with that. It's the fact that you want to connect with another human and you want to specifically impart knowledge that makes them better.
Yeah, you're a teacher.
You're a teacher.
Yeah.
And he's like, let me think about that for a second. And he started piecing it together. How many different roles? He's like, that's actually why I go to church too. I really like teaching people to meditate and to pray and to be spiritual. And holy crap, this is when a person comes to that realization, they decode. It's like seeing into the Matrix, like we talked about the red pill, right?
The red pill. We are taking the red pill right now.
They took the red pill and now they see the code and they're nerding out like we are. And side note, I know people are hating on the new one, but I liked it.
I liked the arc and I like to know what happened with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was cool.
I mean, it wasn't the first one, but it's still cool.
Nothing will ever be as good as the first one.
That was amazing, though.
All the snobs that are like 2, 3, and 4, they all suck. And like, you know what? The fans liked it.
But just appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
I'm with you on that.
So what about the couple? You had a recent pair that basically one of them had said spirituality was one of their things. And ultimately it boiled down to this was her social circle.
It was a social circle. I mean, I could use
Was that difficult for her to come to?
It actually, she got quiet.
Yeah.
She got really, really quiet because it was like, no, I do this for God. And it became, well, what do you do when you're there? I hang out with my friends. Mm. We go out after, we get lunch after. And then there's no real Bible studies. It's just the going out on the Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's like none of your actions other than just showing up to the service shows that this is really about serving God. It's more about the social. And there's nothing wrong with that. The social aspect is fine.
There's nothing wrong with it except for the fact that this is how we fool ourselves.
But this is how sometimes people are like, man, I'm a good person, or I'm pursuing this job and why didn't I get it? Oftentimes they're pursuing the mental image of what they think they want versus their actual value underneath.
Yeah.
And that disconnect causes things to not happen for them.
Yeah. I think that disconnect also causes them to make, the disconnect causes us to make a lot of bad decisions because we're using, heuristics can be a good thing, right? Heuristics are mental shortcuts. This is how we come to, we all use heuristics to make quick judgments, right? And what we're trying to say in let's say creating relationships is that you should create relationships with people that have similar values. And that would be an accurate heuristic. The problem is that we'll simplify it down to, I'm spiritual, so I'm going to find someone else that goes to church. And for example, that woman, that does not mean that you're going to have similar values because again, and this is where the honesty and the ownership comes in. You have to acknowledge and admit to yourself that you are going to church, you are doing that thing because you want to be social. You want to spend time with friends. And so when looking for a partner, you should look for somebody who's extroverted, who also wants to be social and spend time with friends.
Exactly. It requires a lot of honesty. Like I could speak for myself, like in doing this, like I had to, even like the most simplistic things, I had to break it down. Like you took me to jujitsu class, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all about like self-growth and development. And then how long did I last in jujitsu?
About a month. It went longer than I thought you'd go.
I was like, yo, man, because I want to find something that I want to grow in it and I love the discipline. And then I was looking at like Muay Thai.
Yeah.
I used to box before. And then even before then, like when we moved here, I was like, oh, I'm going to play basketball because it's been so long since I played. For the love of the game, I was telling myself, I love it. And then I quit playing basketball too, right?
Yeah.
Like I used to play all the time. And then after really like, why am I quitting these things? Like I started doing the whys for myself.
Yeah.
And then like I started going back to boxing, right? And I thought, oh, it's because of health. It's because of fitness. It's because it's my passion.
I want to know this.
It builds my confidence. So that's why I stopped playing basketball because I wasn't playing at the level that I could.
Interesting.
Because I used to be the baller. I used to be like, I'd run the court so that I don't have that feeling anymore. So I was like, I'm good, man.
Wait. You told me it was your back. You told me your doctor told you to quit jiu-jitsu.
He did.
Okay, so
that part is true. But I could have come back though. I could have come back.
Oh, I see.
I could have come back. I mean, I did throw my back, but I could have come back and be like, oh,
the truth comes out, Glen.
The truth comes out, and it was because I was getting my butt kicked, right? And then exercise for me is beyond the exercise. It has to be a confidence boost. And I got to feel really good about it.
That's fascinating.
Because I need that for myself because that's like a selfish thing for me. And once I realized, I was like, oh, cool. That's why I quit all these things.
Yeah.
And then that's why I still love boxing because I feel like I'm good at it. Right. So besides the exercise, the more it's the confidence boost that I need. I got to feel like I'm really good at something.
Yeah.
And so that was like, oh, that's why I quit all those things.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And if I were to look at, that's the interesting thing about jiu-jitsu is I feel like the people that actually stick to it,
it's a chain.
There's a fundamental value that most of us will share. And that is there's a desire for basically growth through a difficult process. I mean, jiu-jitsu, you're literally paying to get your ass beat non-stop, especially when you're a white belt and then again as a blue belt and then again, like there's no stopping to just the constant ass kicking.
Yeah.
And so the type of person to pay money to come and get humbled each and every day is the person that really finds enjoyment in not only the technical and the fitness and that aspect of it, but in the process of just being humbled and growing through this very difficult thing. And for me, like along the lines of what you just said, I find that I love to teach and I love to educate, right? Jiu-jitsu makes me continuously feel like I'm a new student again. Because in these other arenas, it's very easy for me in photography and business and in coaching and in relationships and in everything that I do as an educator. It's very easy for me to fall into this. I'm comfortable, I'm good, and it's fine. And I can forget what it's like to just start out at something. I can forget what it's like to be a new photographer, to be struggling in business, but jiu-jitsu reminds me every day.
You're always beginning again.
Always starting
over and over and over. And that's the thing with me, like outside of exercise, like, working with coaching people and being with people, it's always learning and growing. So I need a break from that. And that's what it meant for me. That core value is, man, I just got to be selfish and I just got to feel good for a little while.
Yeah.
While working out. And that was like a huge realization. I was like, I used to love playing for the love of the game, but it
Yeah.
was more about I'm just not as I'm not that good at that confidence boost of like running the court. I can't do that anymore, so that's why I stopped.
That's a very interesting thing because today I mean, there's not a lot of sports that I could necessarily be great at. But when it comes to like, let's say, for example, road biking, I enjoyed that, namely because I was hanging out with close friends while biking, right? But in getting better and better at the sport, I didn't feel like there was the progression that I wanted from that. It just felt like more power, go faster, do things quicker.
Yeah.
That's about it. Whereas like, and that's the case in almost every sport that I've found is in basketball, you get to a certain place where you're winning and you're beating people. And then you have to get really, really into it to keep leveling up the competition. And if you do that, then I think you can continually find that growth and whatnot. But in jiu-jitsu, you're forced to do that. Like
Huh.
you just go to the mat, and
It's
every
humbling.
day
You never know what you're gonna get.
you don't know what you're gonna get. You're gonna get your butt kicked. There's
Yeah.
always gonna be someone better.
Yeah.
So it was almost like that. It's that one place that fit into each of these values. But you're absolutely right that if you understand that value, then you can find hobbies, careers, relationships that fit into these values very easily. And you can understand why some things take and why some don't.
Oh, it totally makes sense. So like it just breaks everything down. And like I said, like I had to be naked with myself and be like, okay, that's why I'm not choosing these sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about the idea of change and growth in another episode. But for right now, change and growth is the means for how our core values are going to shift over time.
And evolve.
They're going to shift, they're going to evolve. Once we get to a place of self-actualization, this is where we have a general idea of who we are, and we just want to improve on that person each day. That's when our core values tend to they'll kind of evolve a bit, but they're really not going to change that much beyond that place. The thing is that most of us will find ourselves married and we've already created our significant relationships in our lives before that time. Because we're talking, I think most people get to this place when they're about 30. So how many of us have already created all of our relationships, have already,
Yeah.
married and all that stuff before we really have a good understanding of this.
Yeah. And then self-actualization is ultimately it's about purpose,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you have to have some purpose to be happy in life.
Yeah.
And those values based on your purpose will make you a happier person.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we should wrap this one up with how do you identify your core values? Let's do a simplified version of the exercise we do. We have a few different steps that we do, but we'll do a simple version of that. Why don't we start with an activity?
Okay, let's do it.
What's something that you enjoy doing?
Oh, here we go again.
That's not boxing. Why don't you pretend to be one of our clients or one of our case studies?
Okay, I enjoy nature.
Okay. So would you say that is one of your core values? Nature or being out in nature?
Yes,
Okay. Why?
because I get away and then I like watching the birds and I like just being a part of like the green lush and it's quiet.
Okay. What about getting away do you like?
Then I'm by myself and then I have time to think and just kind of process things that are happening in my life.
Okay. So time to get away, to process. Are there other actions or other activities that you do that might help you to do that too?
Reading helps.
Reading?
Yeah,
Do you meditate?
I do meditate.
Do you do yoga?
I do yoga.
Okay. So would it be accurate to say that you value your independence, being alone, having space to meditate?
Yes.
Okay. So you value space and time for yourself.
Yeah, or like solitude.
Solitude.
Yeah.
Great. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So nature is just a means of getting that solitude.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's also why you're interested in yoga and meditation and in reading.
Yeah, like you can actually say it's introspection.
Okay.
I'm very introspective.
Perfect. So we'll put down for if this were an actual case, we might
Yeah.
put down that they value solitude, they value introspection, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to keep going. So what is it about reading that you enjoy? What types of books do you read?
Sci-fi, fantasy,
Why do you read those books?
because it's like another world, and it's about the possibilities of what could be.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an idealism there.
Interesting. Can you tell me more about that idealism?
It's about like, it defines worlds, even though it's not real, about like a better society of life that people can live in.
Okay. That
But
sounds like a very creative, it's like a way of creative expression.
yeah, creative expression, and then also the possibilities like of striving to perfection, even though you may not get there.
Interesting. Do you have any hobbies that might kind of push you towards creativity?
I do a lot of drawing.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
What do you like to draw?
I do like a lot of landscapes, like nature,
Okay.
and then I'll use like kind of abstract art as well.
Very cool.
Yeah, a lot of emotional expression that way.
Okay. So then so far, as far as values go, we would say that you value solitude, right? The space to be able to process and meditate. But then you also value creative expression because in your time that you're reading, you're not necessarily reading, nonfiction books. You're not reading self-development books. You're reading books that kind of expand your creativity. And that also ties to the fact that you're drawing each day, which is also another practice in like being alone, practicing that kind of value of solitude.
Yeah, and then it also shows why I don't like conversation as much, because I like doing it in more indirect ways, introspection and through my art.
So would it be safe to say that if I put you in an art gallery and I forced you to mingle and chat with other people at a cocktail party in an art gallery, would you be uncomfortable?
I'd probably be less. Like I'd still be uncomfortable, but at least it's of interest to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. What if I took you out of that space?
Then I'd be really uncomfortable.
Okay. So the reason why I might want to, well, as a therapist, as a coach, why I would want to know those things is because let's say that I know that you value solitude and I know that you value creative expression. Let's say that you're married to somebody who wants you to go to these social activities, but those social activities have nothing to do with what it is that you value or who you are. And so you find yourself extremely uncomfortable and your partner just wants you to be more like, why can't you talk to people? Why
More
can't you just be
social.
more open
Yeah.
and social? Well, what we could suggest is try social activities and parties and events that are rooted around the ideas of meditation, creative expression, where you would have something in common, where you'd have a core value that ties to the other people that are there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even just understanding, like if the partner understood, like, oh, this isn't their values,
Mm-hmm.
this is why they're having a hard time. At least like the dialogue is there, and you can provide the proper support.
Yeah.
Like I know this isn't what you like, but I know you love art and creative expression, but can you be here for me today?
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets to the heart of the, what it solves problems versus just causing more conflict.
Mm-hmm. And it makes it clear to the other person that when we're in these spaces, this is an ask. This is me asking my partner to step out of their comfort zone, and I need to respect the energy that I'm taking from them. And then to give it back in other arenas, like
Right.
to provide
To counterbalance it
a
out.
balanced effort.
Yeah. And then versus like the superficial thing, like, oh, you're not trying, you don't love me, you don't care about the relationship, versus this is just not who they are. And I understand that.
Yeah.
And they're giving their best.
So what we're getting at in this exercise is that what we're doing is identifying a particular behavior, a hobby, an interest, something that a person does. We're asking why they do that thing. If they say they like to read, why? If they say they like fitness, why? And then we continue diving deeper into it to uncover the actual reason for doing it. Because how many of our clients, how many of our case studies have appreciated fitness and listed that as a value when in reality the value is finding a partner, being attractive, being of worth, like
Yeah.
building their own self-confidence. What they're really doing is they value the feeling of strength and self-confidence.
Exactly.
And that's how they get there, right?
Right.
So it's important to understand that. And then from there, we can start to understand why they're doing a certain thing. So don't stop asking that why question of yourself until you get to a place where you actually have a core value.
Yeah, it's like a spiraling technique. You just keep going all the way until it resonates and you're like, oh, I know why I do this now.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be your core value.
So in the program, we're going to do a little bit of more of a in-depth process of this, but we're going to essentially come up with, if we're working with a couple, it's going to be each person's core values. And then we're going to create a roadmap on how do you get those merged towards the center where we can actually adopt one of those core values.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful thing. And then oftentimes, when you see the values, like you have the shared core values in the middle and then separate core values, oftentimes there's nothing in the middle when they start.
Mm-hmm.
And then over this period, it starts to fill out.
Correct. Yeah. And if it's an individual, it's really about addressing and identifying those core values and helping that person to understand how this is going to shape everything that they're doing, their decisions in their career and profession, their friendships, mm-hmm. their family relationships, as well as who to date, how to date.
And who to let go of in your life that's not serving your values.
Correct.
So it's about letting go as well as achieving goals at the same time.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man.
Awesome, dude. Well, I had fun.
Yeah, me too, man.
Did you have fun?
We talked about the Matrix, man. Of course.
We got a little red pill action.
We did.
Okay.
It's awesome, man.
So that's it for this episode. Like we've been discussing, if you guys are interested in coaching, you can jump on to 12weekrelationships.com. You can sign up for individual or couples coaching. We have started a wait list because we do have a lot of inquiries coming in. So as openings come up on Dr. Glen's schedule, we just make calls in the order that they're coming in. And what else do we have? We have online coaching programs coming soon. So if you guys join any of our newsletters, as well as the waitlist, you will automatically be added into the newsletter. And each week we're going to send you tips, valuable advice once we get started on that. That's going to be an early 2022 thing.
Yeah.
And then when we have online coaching available, that will be one of the things that we offer as well. In the meantime, if you guys would like to subscribe to the podcast, we would absolutely love that. You can find us wherever podcasts are available, Spotify, iTunes. We're also on YouTube. And we have social media at 12 Week Relationships too, where we get little snippets and reels that we get to throw your way. There's plenty of ways to connect. So,
yeah, it's awesome. Thank you so much for your support. It's been amazing.
Yeah, we appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.